What is the Statue of Liberty? What is the Statue of Liberty? In July 1976, the United States had a holiday. It was the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. All over the country, towns and cities celebrated. In New York City, there were fireworks, parades, and patriotic speeches. Right in the middle of it all stood that towering symbol of American freedom, the Statue of Liberty. The statue's real name is Liberty Enlightening the World, but it's often called Lady Liberty or the Statue of Liberty. The statue is huge, 151 feet and 1 inch tall. That's about as tall as a tower of 35 11-year-old kids stacked head to toe. It's made of copper and is mostly hollow, with a metal skeleton-like support structure inside and stairs so visitors can walk up into its crown. Today, about 4 million people visit the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island every year. Like the American flag, the statue is shown on army posters and postage stamps. A picture of the torch is on the $10 bill. Advertisers have used it to sell everything from soap to hamburgers. It even has had roles in such movies as Planet of the Apes, Independence Day, and Superman 2. Since 1886, the statue has offered a message of hope to immigrants coming to America. From the late 1800s into the 1900s, millions came from other countries. Most were very poor, and most came from Europe. They crossed the Atlantic Ocean on steamships. As the majority of those ships sailed into the New York harbor, one of the first landmarks they saw was the Statue of Liberty. They would cheer and sometimes cry with joy. At last they had reached America, land of liberty, where they hoped to start a new and better life. During the World Wars I and II, American soldiers from all over the U.S. were sent to New York City. There they boarded ships bound for the European battlefields. As they departed, they sailed past the statue. It inspired patriotic feelings in so many of them, and when soldiers returned after the wars, the statue was there to welcome them home. Surprisingly, the Statue of Liberty was not the United States' idea. It was a gift from the people of France. A French professor first proposed the idea. A French sculptor designed the statue, and a French engineer designed its inner framework. Americans were not even sure they wanted the statue at first. Some were suspicious about the reasons behind the gift. They almost said no to France. Chapter 1, The Big Idea. It all started in 1865 at a dinner party outside of Paris, France. At least that's the legend that was printed in the fundraising brochure for the Statue of Liberty 20 years later. The party was held in the home of a law professor named Eduardo de Bellefort. He was an expert on American history. He'd written books about the American way of government. He thought all countries should be like the United States, free to elect their own government leaders. The Civil War had just ended in America. Bellefort had admired President Abraham Lincoln for bringing slavery to an end and uniting all the states again after the war. This was a sign that the democratic form of government was strong. In the end, it had worked well even during troubled times. Just as the 13 American colonies had once risen up against the King of England, so too had the French people rebelled against their king. The French Revolution had begun in 1789, only 13 years after Americans proclaimed their independence. Unfortunately, unlike the American Revolution, the French Revolution ended in disaster. Instead of becoming a free country, France was ruled by a series of emperors. Their word was law. The French people couldn't say anything against the government without getting in big trouble. Bellefort wanted to make a statement in support of political freedom, but he needed to do it in a way that wouldn't put him in danger. He couldn't help but dream, what if France gave America an amazing monument that celebrated liberty? One of Bellefort's dinner guests that night was a sculptor. His name was Frederic Auguste Bartholdi. He liked to work big. He'd gone to see the pyramids and the Sphinx in Egypt. These gigantic ancient monuments really impressed him. He wasn't quite as interested in American politics as Bellefort, but he loved his statue idea and volunteered to sculpt it. The French Revolution. King Louis of, King Louis XIV of France helped American colonists win independence from England in 1783. The American War cost France a lot of money. His wife, Queen Marie Antoinette... Is that really? Yeah, it is right. Okay. His wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, liked to buy fancy clothes and jewels and threw big parties. While the king and queen spent the country's riches as they pleased, poor French people were starving. On July 14, 1789, the French Revolution began, when Paris citizens broke into Bastille prison and stole weapons to fight the king and his government. The French revolutionaries got together and wrote their own Declaration of Independence, which they called the Declaration of Rights of Man. Soon battles became bloody and violent. In 1793, the king and queen were beheaded by guillotine. Rich, powerful people were thought to be enemies of everyday French people. Over 17,000 politicians, landowners, and business owners were put on trial and executed. Many were beheaded. In 1799, a general in the French army named Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power and the revolution ended. Of course, Bartholdi knew just as well as Le Bouillet that such a statue could land them in jail. They'd be arrested by Emperor Napoleon III's secret police. Their idea was put on hold, but not forgotten. Meanwhile, Bartholdi took a second trip to Egypt in 1869. He hoped to design a lighthouse at the entrance to the newly built Suez Canal, which connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. It would be no ordinary lighthouse. It would be in the shape of a woman. He wanted to name it Egypt Bringing Light to Asia. Besides actually lighting the way for ships, his statue would symbolize Egypt leading the way to new ideas. Bartholdi quickly made sketches and models of the statue. Egypt's ruler liked the project. However, Egypt didn't have the money to build it. Many historians think Bartholdi based the Statue of Liberty on his ideas for the Suez Canal lighthouse. He would never say why he had done both designs as women in ancient-style clothes, or why both wear crowns and held a torch high in one hand. By 1870, Napoleon III was no longer in power. Le Bouillet hoped that now a democracy would take root in France. Presenting a statue in honor of liberty to America might inspire the French to work toward a liberal elected government of their own. He knew that building a gigantic statue would cost a lot of money. Would his fellow citizens think it was worth it? What about Americans? What would they think of the idea? Would they agree to accept the statue? Would they offer a suitable piece of land where the statue could be displayed? Bartholdi decided to find out. Alright. Le Bouillet was born on January 18, 1811 in Paris, France. Not only was he an expert on U.S. history, but he also taught the very first class on the U.S. Constitution at a French college. He believed that every person had the right to be free and would likely be happy that people in France were now free to elect their political leaders. Bartholdi was born into a prosperous family on August 2, 1834, in Colomar, France. His father died when he was 2 years old, and his family moved to Paris. His mother encouraged his studies in art. Although Le Bouillet came up with the idea for the Statue of Liberty, it was Bartholdi who became world famous as its creator. His second most famous sculpture is the Lion De Bellefort, a 72-foot-long sandstone lion. It's in the town of Belfort, France, about 45 miles from where Bartholdi was born.